So there was a rich man who lived in a village, and there was a new priest that came to that village. And he bumped into the priest and he said, "Oh, priest, can you ask God a question for me?" He said, "When I die, can I take my riches with me?" The priest said, "Well, I know the answer to that. No, you can't." He said, No, just ask God. Just ask God." And a couple of weeks later, he bumped into the priest. And he said, "Oh, did you get to ask God about the riches?" And the priest said, "Well, you won't believe this, but God actually said you can." So the rich man said, "Well, there you go. You see, it's always worth asking." Anyway, it wasn't that long after that he died. And he had arranged for his whole inheritance, rather than be given to his children or his wife or anybody else, to be sold and to be made into beautiful blocks of gold and to be buried with him. So this is a joke, by the way. Don't think this. Some of you are like, "I don't think this can be true." So anyway, this is what we call a joke. Right, yeah, so hopefully it's going to be funny. Anyway, so he gets to St. Peter at the gate, and he's got this duffel bag, full of his gold. And he comes to Peter, and Peter says, "Who are you?" and stuff, and "You can't bring that in." And the man said, "Well, actually, God said I could." And Peter's like, "Hang on a minute." So he's like, "Oh, there's a man here who's..." "What? Really? Huh. Well," he said, "God says you can bring it in." So the man said, "Oh, I told you." So he was, as he was passing Peter with this duffel bag full of... Peter said, "Just out of curiosity, what's actually in it?" So he put it down proudly and opened it up. And Peter looked at it and said, "You're bringing paving stones into heaven." So that was the joke. Thank you both of you for laughing. Here's quite a tough question. And you might think, hang on, what's that got to do with anything? The question is this: do you know where your heart is? Now, Jesus gives us a really good way of finding out where our heart is. And he says, wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is. So if you think about it, what do you really treasure? That's where your heart will be. Now, you might say, well, why do I need to know this? It doesn't matter. I don't, it doesn't, we all treasure different things and all the rest of it. It was funny, before I got the job at the other church, I was preaching there, and one of the leaders wasn't there that day, but his wife was there. And she came back from the service, and he said, "Oh, how was it?" whatever, and because they didn't know me. And she said, "Well, it's funny, the preacher today said that idols are good things." And he said, "Well, that's funny." Anyway, I didn't know about this, because obviously that was back in their house. About a month later, I was kind of in this sort of interview thing, and he was there, Paul. He's now my line manager. And he said... "My wife said that you preached the other day and that you said idols are good." And I was like, "No, I didn't say that. I said we idolize good things." In other words, nobody makes an idol out of something that's bad. We idolize good things, but idols are not good to have idols. And I thought, well done for you, Paul, mate. You come to this interview panel. You've given me the shadow of the doubt. Your wife told you that I preached that idols are good things. It's good to have idols. And here you are still. And anyway, it all worked out good, and I got the job. But the point being, we tend to treasure things that are good. But why is that a problem? It's a problem because those things, whatever we treasure, begins to control us. Begins to have power over us. And that's what this story this morning is. So, where's my heart? Well, it's wherever my treasure is. Why does it matter where my treasure is? Because wherever my treasure is, that's what will begin to control me. In some cases, it may be our house. Maybe we love our house. We're so proud of the house we live in. Well, beware, because that will begin to control you. Sometimes it's not stuff that money can buy. Sometimes it's stuff like our children. We're very, very proud of our children. Or we're very proud of what we've achieved in life. Whatever we really treasure, just be aware that what you treasure will begin to control you. And that's what this parable is about, because it's a bizarre parable, isn't it? I don't know if you caught the bizarreness. The guy, it starts out, Jesus says, there was this manager, and he was caught for for whatever. We don't know exactly what he did, but the landowner said, give an account of your management because you cannot be a manager any longer. So the situation would have been a landowner with, let's just say a vineyard, and then he employs a manager to manage the vineyard, to grow the grapes or whatever, make the oil or whatever, and then to sell it and to get it at a good price and stuff, and to manage that whole estate for him. Well, anyway, he's been doing something dodgy or something wrong, and now he's told that he's going to lose his job. This parable only really made sense to me when my father found out that he was going to lose his life. What happened was that my dad was 76. He was very healthy, and we went to visit him at Christmas, and he complained of a very, very sore shoulder. Now, in honesty, Dad's health was brilliant all his life, and so he tended to make a big deal out of little things, like man flu and things like that. So when he complained about his shoulder, we sort of thought, yeah, Dad, just, get over it. Anyway, he went to the doctor. The doctor felt the same thing, just get over it. But he finally, the shoulder was just so sore. He saw a physio. The physio looked at the shoulder and felt it, whatever, and said, you need an x-ray today. He got an x-ray on the Friday, but the results didn't come out until the Monday. That Sunday night, in the middle of the night, he fitted at 3 a.m. He had this fit, and his wife, my stepmom, phoned the ambulance, took him to a hospital in Queens in Nottingham. And by the time I knew about it, the next morning, Monday morning, my sister happened to be visiting me. I mean, this is the way God works. My sister from Nottingham was visiting me. She's only done that like 2 or 3 times. It's a big deal for her to come down all that way. She was visiting me at the time. I got a phone call from my stepmom, 7:30 in the morning. I thought she must have been an accidental dial because nobody phones each other at 7:30 in the morning. I answered the phone and my stepmom said, Dad is in Queen's Hospital and he's got cancer throughout all his whole body. All his bones are riddled with cancer. And he has a tumor on the brain. And that's what caused him to fit. And that's actually, of course, what caused his shoulder to be so incredibly sore. So I was with my sister. We just dropped everything and we drove all the way up to Nottingham that morning. And it was just by God's grace that we were together, because I think it would have especially hit my sis. She lives on her own, and it would have been a very, very hard thing for her to take. We went to see my dad in the hospital, and he looked absolutely awful. He barely recognized us. And 6 weeks and 6 days to that Sunday, his life went. I don't say he died, because in Christ we don't die, do we? We have an eternal God, means we never will die. Even Paul said that. You're just asleep. But he went to sleep, as it were, 6 weeks and 6 days later. So here's the thing. Halfway through that time, this parable, God gave me this parable because my dad knew that his days were coming very soon. His day was coming very soon. And the question became very pertinent. How do you live in light of the fact that your life is soon on this earth going to be over? He actually had some incredible dreams. He had a dream from my cousin. And he called my cousin to come up. Now, I saw her, funny enough, just yesterday, but she lives in Yate. She and my uncle and aunt went up 3-hour journey up to Nottingham to hear what my dad's dream for this girl Esther was. He shared the dream with her. She was so touched, so moved by it, that she gave her life back to Jesus. And she came back to Christ through that dream. And Dad had a lot of different remarkable instances in this time. But one of the things that I realized for Dad, and I tried to help him with this, and actually I think his tumor was kind of too strong at the time, and it was beginning to affect his mind and stuff. But I said to him, there's a parable called the Shrewd Manager. In that parable, a man realizes he's going to lose everything that he has. He's going to lose his money, his income, and his status. Now, that's what he was told by the boss. It's going to happen. It's going to happen very soon. You're going to lose this. You're going to lose everything that is invaluable to you. What are you going to do about it, right? The manager thinks, what can I do with what I'm going to lose to gain what I can never lose? That might ring a bell with somebody called Jim Elliot. Jim Elliot went to the Huaorani tribe in Ecuador to tell them about Jesus. When he landed the plane, after much research and working, him and this 4 of the men landed the plane on the river of the Amazon River. They got out of the plane to meet this reputedly very dangerous tribe. And they were all killed. And his wife, Elizabeth Elliot, was the first person to be a missionary to those same people. And they came to know Christ, the Hurani people. You can read about that story. And Jim Elliot said these words, and I've always tried to live by them. He said, "He is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." Right? So this shrewd manager had been told something that all of us need to know, which is that what we treasure and what we value and what we think maybe we own and what we think is everything to us, at some point we're going to lose that. So the question is, if we know we're going to lose it, how do we use it so that we gain something that we can never lose? And so this man did this bizarre thing where he took the debtors. Now these were people who owed the landowner stuff, masses, 800 gallons of oil. I don't know, that's a huge amount, 3 tons of the stuff. 1,000 bushels would probably fill this whole church. You know, these are significant debtors, and they owe the landowner these debts. And this man thinks, hang on, before I lose my job, I know what I can do. I can reduce these guys' debts so that when I lose my job, which I'm losing anyway, when I lose my job, I will have gained their friendship and trust. And bizarrely, Jesus says that is shrewdness, and that is what you should do. He's not commending dishonesty. What he's commending is using what you're going to lose to gain what you can never lose. Because there's a direct line between this life and the life to come. If you think thus far that when you die, you're going to be sitting in heaven doing nothing, then let me introduce you to what the Bible says. Firstly, you're going to have a new body. You're going to have a new body that can be touched, that can be hugged, that can eat things, that can talk, that can walk with people. You're going to have a new body. The only difference between that body and this body is that it won't be able to be imprisoned. That was the body of Jesus Christ. Jesus appeared in a room like that. But then he said, "You don't believe me? Touch my scars. Give me something to eat." Mary hugged him. So we will have bodies just like these bodies, except that they cannot be imprisoned. That is the huge difference. Secondly, if you think you're going to be in heaven, the Bible actually says we're not. We're going to be on a new earth. Now, whether that's a renewed earth or a brand new earth is a topic for debate, but the point is, if you enjoy trees, if you enjoy nature, if you enjoy gardening, if you enjoy working with your hands, if you enjoy relationships, if you enjoy doing things that are significant, if you enjoy anything of the good stuff of this life, then you're well prepared for the new earth, because it's going to have that and more. Think of the parable of the talents. Do you remember that story? The king was going away, so he entrusted 5 talents to one man, 2 to another man, and 1 to the other. When he came back, the man who had 5 talents had doubled it. What did he say? "Well done, good and faithful servant. Here is 10 cities to look after." Cities? I thought we were talking about talents. We're going to be reigning with Christ. We're going to be looking after the new earth. So everything we learn now, every way we are entrusted by God now, we will be using that in the future. So I just wanted to tie up the end of this with these words that were read to us. "I tell you, use worldly wealth," said Jesus, "to gain friends for yourself, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings." That's the first thing. It turns out there is something we can take into the next life. Of course, it's not slabs of gold, but it is relationships. And Jesus is saying, use what you're going to lose to gain what you can never lose. And that's what we need to be thinking about. And I just wanted to bring this together for us a little bit like this. The first thing to understand, I've just got 2 points. The one is this: we are to be stewards, not owners. I know in a capitalist country like ours, ownership is very, very important, and we have a lot of legal documentation to prove that we own this and we own that. But it's not an idea that comes from God. Inasmuch as when God entrusted the Garden of Eden to Adam and Eve, he put them there. He didn't say, this garden is yours, you own it. He said, look after this. Look after that. We are stewards, not owners. When we feel we are owners, we hold on to things that actually, in a moment of humility, you'll realize you can't actually hold on to. Even my dad's life, it was a gift to him, but actually he couldn't really hold on to it because life is a gift. And if he had been torturing himself, saying, I've got to hold on to this, I've got to hold on to this. Firstly, he couldn't. And secondly, what a sad way to use what you're going to lose. You are going to lose it. This is not a sermon to depress us. It's a sermon to free us. You see, the dishonest manager had probably been dishonored for quite a long time. What arrested and changed his behavior was knowing he was going to lose his role. And that actually turned out to be what triggered him to do what turned out to be a very clever and a commendable thing, in as much as what we can learn from this. So we are stewards, not owners. Why do you say this is important, John? Well, because when you own something, it always owns you. Have you noticed that? I want to do this and no one's going to stop me. Well, it's great to have ambitions, but when you own something, be careful, because it ends up owning you. It controls you. When somebody tries to gently challenge that, and it might be something as subtle and powerful as our own identity. It took me a long time to realize that actually when my mum and other people kept saying how good I was at things, that had begun to create my identity. And I thought that's who I am. I am John Mark, who is good at these things. I am John Mark, who is a content baby. I am John Mark, who's an easy child to bring up. I am John Mark, who's a joy to my mother's eye. Now, those are all good things. But what happened was that they defined me. One day, God opened my eyes. And he showed me that he sees me fully, like a surgeon's lights that go on and exposes everything about you, and that he loves me completely, unconditionally. And at that moment, I realized that I went from being a good boy, a good son, a good this, a good that, to being a child of the living God, which is way better. Way better. It's infinitely better, because it's something that I can never lose. One day I'll stop being a good this and a good that. I might lose my voice. I might lose my mind. I might do something which breaks everybody's confidence. There's lots of ways I could lose this. It's so stressful. But when I exchanged it for something which I cannot lose, which is this identity in Christ, I'm a child of the living God. Sometimes people say to me, John Mark, thank you for that sermon, that you're a good preacher. Now I try to think, no, I'm not. I'm a child of the living God. I'm not going to be defined by even good things. Because what happens the next time I get into the pulpit, I'm stressed out. What if I'm not good this time? Are you a good mother? I would encourage you to see yourself as a daughter of the living God. Yes, God has given you the opportunity to be a mother, and God empowers you to be the best mother you can be, but don't let that define you as your identity. I am a good mother. Why? Because when you hit problems in there, you will be twisted by that. You'll say, I can't do that. That doesn't look, that's not what a good mother would do. I can't show people that I'm struggling with my children, because they'll think, hang on, I thought she was a good mother. You know what I mean? We get hijacked by what becomes important to us. That same thing will control us unless we have allowed that to go and we've exchanged it for the God who loves us. Now, why should God then be the most important in our lives? Why? Because he loves us unconditionally. I just told you that whatever you love will control you. So if you love God more than anything else, then you are in the hands of a God who loves you unconditionally. If you love your salary, if you love your ambition, if you love your children, if you love your marriage, if you love your identity, if you love your reputation, if you love any of these things, ultimately, then you will be controlled by them. And you'll never be free. That's why Jesus is commending this. So that's the first thing. We should be stewards, not owners. Hold it lightly. This is why Jesus said, if somebody asks for your cloak, give him your tunic as well. It's like, what? What about my ownership? Well, no, you're a steward. And you can invest your tunic to potentially influence that person. So that was the first thing. We are stewards, not primarily owners. The second thing, and with this I'm going to end, and then I'm going to play that because it will tie in with what we're trying to say. Jesus says money can be a ruthless master. It's easy to think of money as a neutral thing. Money is just a piece of paper. Jesus says it can control you. How does it control you? How can a floppy little piece of paper control you? Well, because it gives you power. See, when I have £20, that means society owes me £20 worth of something. I can go into a shop and demand something that's got a price tag of £20. That makes sense? That's what society owes me. When I have a great car, in a sense, society recognizes that and says, wow, you are somebody. When I have a great house, when I have children who do what they're supposed to, there's lots of ways that we think we get our identity and our meaning, and it's tied in with money. And money is a very, very convenient way to essentially get power and identity. And Jesus said, this money is powerful, and it will control you unless you find a more powerful God in your life. So that's what we want. We want Jesus to help us to break free from the power of money. Now, let me just go back to my dad, and with this I'm going to finish. My dad played the accordion from the age of about 9 or something like that. He taught himself. He played it all through his life. He led worship in Africa and in England and stuff like that. It was so important to him. When the cancer began to really ravish his body, about 3 weeks into his 6.5-week window of time, he could no longer play it. And I said to him, Dad, when you pass away, I'm going to inherit that accordion, aren't I? He said, yes. I said, what about if right now you gave it to me and you blessed me with it? And you let the blessing that you've used for 70 years playing the accordion fall on me. You see, in 3 weeks' time, we didn't know that, but in 3 weeks after he blessed me with that accordion, he went. And I would have inherited it anyway. What difference did it make that he blessed me with it and deliberately gave it to me? It meant a lot. Here's the thing about an inheritance. Technically, your children or whoever's in your will get what you are going to give. Well, you don't really give it. You lose it when you pass away, and they inherit it. Right? That's the system, that's the way it works. And I'm not saying we should undermine that system. I'm not saying it's a bad system. I'm just saying, for some things that are important to you, have you thought about deliberately, prayerfully giving them to somebody now, before you go? Because it feels quite different to be given something and blessed with it than just to end up being told by the executor of the will, oh, by the way, John Mark, the accordions are yours. How do we use what we're going to lose so that we gain what we will never lose?